Chapter 22 of Sense and Sensibility. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. Chapter 22. Marianne, who had never much toleration for anything like impertinence, vulgarity, inferiority of parts, or even difference of taste from herself, was at this time particularly ill-disposed, from the state of her spirits, to be pleased with the Miss Steeles, or to encourage their advances, and to the invariable coldness of her behaviour towards them, which checked every endeavour at intimacy on their side, Elinor principally attributed that preference of herself, which soon became evident in the manners of both, but especially of Lucy, who missed no opportunity of engaging her in conversation, or of striving to improve their acquaintance by an easy and frank communication of her sentiments. Lucy was naturally clever. Her remarks were often just and amusing, and as a companion for half an hour Elinor frequently found her agreeable. But her powers had received no aid from education. She was ignorant and illiterate, and her deficiency of all mental improvement, her want of information in the most common particulars, could not be concealed from Miss Dashwood, in spite of her constant endeavour to appear to advantage. Elinor saw, and pitied her for, the neglect of abilities which education might have rendered so respectable; but she saw, with less tenderness of feeling, the thorough want of delicacy, of rectitude, and integrity of mind, which her attentions, her assiduities, her flatteries at the park betrayed; and she could have no lasting satisfaction in the company of a person who joined insincerity with ignorance, whose want of instruction prevented their meeting in conversation on terms of equality, and whose conduct toward others made every show of attention and deference towards herself perfectly valueless.
"You will think my question an odd one, I dare say,"
said Lucy to her one day, as they were walking together from the park to the cottage.
"But pray, are you personally acquainted with your sister-in-law's mother, Mrs. Ferrars?"
Elinor did think the question a very odd one, and her countenance expressed it, as she answered that she had never seen Mrs. Ferrars.
"Indeed?"
replied Lucy.
"I wonder at that, for I thought you must have seen her at Norland sometimes. Then, perhaps, you cannot tell me what sort of a woman she is?"
"No,"
returned Elinor, cautious of giving her real opinion of Edward's mother, and not very desirous of satisfying what seemed impertinent curiosity.
"I know nothing of her."
"I am sure you think me very strange for inquiring about her in such a way,"
said Lucy, eyeing Elinor attentively as she spoke.
"But perhaps there may be reasons. I wish I might venture, but however I hope you will do me the justice of believing that I do not mean to be impertinent."
Elinor made her a civil reply, and they walked on for a few minutes in silence. It was broken by Lucy, who renewed the subject again by saying, with some hesitation,
"I cannot bear to have you think me impertinently curious. I am sure I would rather do anything in the world than be thought so by a person whose good opinion is so well worth having as yours. And I am sure I should not have the smallest fear of trusting you. Indeed, I should be very glad of your advice on how to manage in such an uncomfortable situation as I am. But, however, there is no occasion to trouble you. I am sorry you do not happen to know Mrs. Ferrars."
"I am sorry I do not,"
said Elinor in great astonishment.
"if it could be of any use to you to know my opinion of her, but I never really understood that you were at all connected with that family, and therefore I am a little surprised, I confess, at so serious an inquiry into her character."
"I dare say you are, and I am sure I do not wonder at all at it. But if I dared tell you all, you would not be so much surprised. Mrs. Ferrars is certainly nothing to me at present, but the time may come. How soon it will come must depend upon herself, when we may be very intimately connected.
She looked down as she said this, amiably bashful, with only one side glance at her companion to observe its effect on her.
Good heavens!
Cried Eleanor.
What do you mean? Are you acquainted with Mr. Robert Ferrars? Can you be?
And she did not feel much delighted with the idea of such a sister-in-law.
No,
replied Lucy.
Not to Mr. Robert Ferrars. I never saw him in my life. But,
fixing her eyes upon Eleanor,
to his eldest brother.
What felt Eleanor at that moment? Astonishment, that would have been as painful as it was strong, had not an immediate disbelief of the assertion attended it. She turned towards Lucy in silent amazement, unable to divine the reason or object of such a declaration. And though her complexion varied, she stood firm in incredulity, and felt in no danger of an hysterical fit or a swoon.
You may well be surprised,
continued Lucy,
for to be sure you could not have had no idea of it before, for I dare say he never dropped the smallest hint of it to you or any of your family, because it was always meant to be a great secret, and I am sure it has been faithfully kept by me to this hour. Not a soul of all my relations know of it but Anne, and I should never have mentioned it to you if I had not felt the greatest dependence in the world upon your secrecy, and I really thought my behaviour in asking so many questions about Mrs. Ferrars must seem so odd that it ought to be explained. And I do not think Mr. Ferrars can be displeased when he knows I have trusted you, because I know he has the highest opinion in the world of all your family, and looks upon yourself and the other Miss Dashwoods quite as his own sisters.
She paused. Eleanor for a few minutes remained silent. Her astonishment at what she heard was at first too great for words, but at length forcing herself to speak, and to speak cautiously, she said, with calmness of manner, which tolerably well concealed her surprise and solicitude,
May I ask if your engagement is of long standing?
We have been engaged these 4 years.
4 years?
Yes.
Eleanor, though greatly shocked, still felt unable to believe it.
I did not know,
said she,
that you were even acquainted till the other day.
Our acquaintance, however, is of many years' date. He was under my uncle's care, you know, a considerable while.
Your uncle?
Yes, Mr. Pratt. Did you never hear him talk of Mr. Pratt?
I think I have,
replied Eleanor with an exertion of spirits which increased with her increase of emotion.
He was 4 years with my uncle, who lives at Longstaple, near Plymouth. It was there our acquaintance begun, for my sister and me was often staying with my uncle, and it was there our engagement was formed, though not till a year after he had quitted as a pupil. But he was almost always with us afterwards. I was very unwilling to enter into it, as you may imagine, without the knowledge and approbation of his mother, but I was too young, and loved him too well to be so prudent as I ought to have been. Though you do not know him so well as me, Miss Dashwood, you must have seen enough of him to be sensible he is very capable of making a woman sincerely attached to him.
Certainly,
answered Eleanor, without knowing what she said. But after a moment's reflection, she added, with revived security of Edward's honour and love, and her companion's falsehood,
Engaged to Mr. Edward Ferrars! I confess myself so totally surprised at what you tell me that really, I beg your pardon, but surely there must be some mistake of person or name. We cannot mean the same Mr. Ferrars.
We can mean no other,
cried Lucy, smiling.
Mr. Edward Ferrars, the eldest son of Mrs. Ferrars of Park Street, and brother of your sister-in-law, Mrs. John Dashwood, is the person I mean. You must allow that I am not likely to be deceived as to the name of the man on whom all my happiness depends.
It is strange,
replied Eleanor, in a most painful perplexity,
that I should never have heard him even mention your name.
No, considering our situation, it was not strange. Our first care has been to keep the matter secret. You knew nothing of me or my family, and therefore there could be no occasion for ever mentioning my name to you, and as he was always particularly afraid of his sister's